Hey, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Should be yet another great late night conversation. It just happens to be New Year's Eve. So that's going to be cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. Glad that you're all here tonight. We're having a late night stream. We'll probably cut this off around 11 so I can go do our New Year's ritual with my wife. She has various traditions she has us do on New Year's Eve. We eat grapes and we say certain things. And, my wife is a little bit superstitious, but I appreciate that about her. And so far, the superstitions have worked out well, so I'll take it. I'll be cutting this off around 11, but tonight is a very special stream. We do this every so often. This is an open stream. If you would like to join the stream and give your thoughts, you can do that. You can come on and give your opinion. The phone lines are open, as they say in radio. You're welcome to join the stream. The link is here. It's on StreamYard. It is on my Facebook page. It is on YouTube. It is on Rumble. You are welcome to join the stream. A couple ground rules. I do have the discretion. Obviously, if I can't see your face, I'm not bringing you on. I need to see your face. If the conversation goes in certain directions, it ends very quickly. But, I think you all have common sense. Certain things would be off limits. But for the most part, just come on and chat. I would love to have you all come on and give me a piece of your mind, kind of an end of the year reunion, so to speak, on this channel. So the phone lines are open. Anyone is welcome to join the stream tonight and share with me your perspective. Give me some thoughts about what is on your mind. I'd love to have you join the stream. That is what we're doing. I see we got one person already who's jumped on. Before I bring him on, I will say that the way we do this will be normal. Opening remarks first, followed by the roll call, followed by me answering your questions. So if you got any questions you would like me to answer in the second half of the show, by all means, send me a super chat or a Rumble rant. Now there's two people on. So why don't we bring on first David Fox. David, how you doing? David.
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself, you there?
Hey, I'm here. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Happy New Year.
Great. Is it already January 1st in Australia?
Yeah. We're ahead by you by about 14 hours at the moment.
Okay.
And it's pretty hot out here at the moment. I'm actually on my way back home. Got another 2 hours, and so I'm just second from the car. But I saw the stream. You invited me on. I wanted to say a big hello anyway, and Happy New Year from Australia.
Great. Hey, can you show us the countryside around you? I'm curious what the landscape looks like.
All right, give me a moment. I'm in my car, so I just don't want to go too far. I don't know how I can turn around. But
I've never been to Australia, so I'm curious what it looks like. Yeah.
Right.
Wow, this is live from Australia. David Fox. Look at that. Wow. Okay. Very nice. It's summertime out there in Australia, right? Your seasons are reversed. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. Yes. David Fox is an anti-imperialist, a beloved member of our community, a very active trade unionist, labor unionist. We love your work, David, and we're really excited to have you every time you come on here. We're going to have you on sometime to talk about the state of the labor movement in Australia. That's in the works.
I'd love to come on.
Ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're ready.
Well, yeah, look, to give it, what about the next week? I'm not back to work till the 14th of January.
Okay.
So any time before that is fine with me. What I'll do, I'll send you an email and we'll work out a time to do it because of the time difference between here and America. I think we'll work out a time that's suitable for both of us. Yeah.
All right. Well, very good. Well, David, it's always good to hear from you. Have a safe drive. I hope you're having a lovely holiday season, and it looks beautiful out there. So thank you.
All right. All the best to everyone for the new year, and stay safe, but stay strong. I know it's going to be relatively tough times, but hey, we're fighters.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Thank you. You're the best. You're awesome. David's been a longtime friend and ally of CPI Down Under. So that's really, really great. Matt, how you doing, Matt?
I'm doing all right, Caleb. How about yourself?
I'm good. Where are you calling from?
Titusville, Florida.
Titusville, Florida. Okay.
Yeah,
very good.
NASA's just down the street. Happy New Year's to you.
Thank you.
Well, last time I spoke with you, well, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but I last time I talked with you, the United Healthcare CEO was still alive, I ask you as a person who is a Christian, and I understand the whole Christ would tell you to turn the other cheek, but I mean, at what point do people have to? I mean, like I listened to Taylor Lorenz talk to Piers Morgan, and she said that this guy, what was his name? Brian Thompson. He was a father. He had kids and all these things, and I understand that. I have a wife of my own. I have a family, but what I don't understand is how when people try to humanize the guy by saying these things, and the fact is that a lot of Americans have died. I mean, I don't know exactly how many, but I'd say let's say conservatively 10,000 people have died, because they don't have proper health care, right? And I guess it's not directly his fault, because it's not exactly, he's just telling people we're going to deny the care, but I want to make a comparison, and you can tell me whether this is fair or not. Bin Laden, really bad guy. I mean, we were funding him, to fight the Russians in the 80s with the Mujahideen and all that. He, helped make 9/11 happen. Terrible, horrible, bad thing. 3,000 Americans died, right? And the whole reason why we wasted 20 years in the Middle East. When the Navy SEALs went in and took him out, apparently, according to, I can't remember the guy's name, who wrote the book, but he was, I think his name was Matt Bissonnette, the guy that apparently actually shot Bin Laden. Mm-hmm. In his book, he said that, I think the book was called No Easy Day. He said that 2 of Bin Laden's wives jumped in front of the bullets before he was taken out himself. Yeah. So I'd like to know, how does someone like Piers Morgan say that we can't humanize, or we need to remember, Brian Thompson had a wife and kids, but Bin Laden, hold on, killed less Americans than this guy does. Mm-hmm. And he had a wife and kids. And I'm not saying violence is the answer, but I'm looking for a little consistency here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I mean, no
one's made that point, and I'm sitting here scratching my head like, okay. Piers
Morgan is full of shit, right? You know that.
Oh, certified shithead indeed.
Yeah, and as far as Brian Thompson, I'm not defending him at all. But what I am worried about is that, first of all, the main point, I think, which is just the standard Marxist point, is that individual terror doesn't get us what we want. That generally it's going to take a mass movement of people to get us health care, and that, Brian Thompson was a functionary of a system, right? I mean, if Brian Thompson had been running United Healthcare in a manner that you and I would consider to be ethical, he would have been fired from his job. because he was obligated to make as much money for his shareholders as he possibly could.
Fiduciary responsibility.
Yeah, and that the problem is systemic, it's not individual. And that this killing leads to the idea, well, it's not a system, it's a problem. It's just guys like Brian Thompson don't have a heart. You know, they're Ebenezer Scrooge, and they need to be visited by the ghost of Christmas past, and then they'll wake up in the morning and they'll feel nice, or they'll be so scared of getting shot that they'll never do it again. And that's not the case. It's a systemic problem. And in order to get the systemic changes we need a mass movement. And
certainly.
I think that what is going to happen, though, is that I think that the glorification of the alleged killer, which, first of all, I'm not sure Luigi did it, right? I mean, it looks like maybe he did, but there's some convincing evidence otherwise.
It presumed innocent till guilty, I say.
Well, right. I mean,
he hasn't done
the eyebrows and the images. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know.
But that said, you know, I remember what happened when Trump was in office the first time, Charlottesville, which did not have to happen that way. It was arranged to happen that way. You know what I'm saying? The KKK does their thing, and there's a million police around them or whatever. But when Trump was in office, they arranged to have a really huge riot in a small town, you know, for political reasons. They needed the theatrics, and I feel like we're headed for an American Years of Lead. That's what the new book is about. Now, that I argue that glorifying this individual assassination is
good. God, you already got another book written. Jesus.
Oh yeah. Well, no, and
you're cranking them out.
Amazon is being weird about it too. It's on Lulu. Amazon won't. It was up, and then they removed it, but they might put it back up. It's being negotiated, but it's on Lulu right now. The link is in the description. And I wrote this short book of, you know, it's a piece about the killing of Brian Thompson, because I think that they are trying to psych up the dissident communities in the United States, that you know, for a wave of political violence, right? And the idea
is, like a whole bunch of copycat dissidents.
Yeah, that's what I think. And they, you know, if you look at the Years of Lead in Italy and the way the Red Brigades operated, right? Italy was going to leave NATO. And the Communist Party was going to win the election. And then the CIA launched Operation Gladio, and a wave.
Yeah, we weren't going to let that happen.
Yeah, a wave of bombings and political assassinations and all of that. And so much instability and all of that. The population just kind of got weary. And as we all know, Italy is now still in NATO. And my feeling is that this is some kind of psyop, because I got
for what NATO's worth.
Do you remember the Chris Dorner killings? Do you remember that situation, 2013?
Can you say that one more time?
Christopher Dorner, 2013. I remember it very well.
Oh, yeah. He was in South Africa. Didn't he go in and kill a bunch of people, if memory serves?
He was in Los Angeles, right? He was in Los Angeles. He was a cop in Los Angeles who saw another cop kick a prisoner in the face, right? And he reported it, and he got wrongfully terminated, right? And he felt he was retaliated against for reporting, you know, the abuse of prisoners. So he went on a killing spree, and he murdered a number of police officers. He murdered their family members, their kids. He published a big manifesto. And it was in 2013. It was a pretty intense killing spree. But, you know, a lot of people really don't like cops because of police brutality and all that. And there were all kinds of Facebook groups and all kinds of Twitter things. Woo, we love Chris Dorner. He's a hero and all of that, because they just hated police so much, right? But you'll notice in that situation, Facebook, Twitter, all of them started blocking the pages, taking people down, you know, shutting down people's accounts. That was not allowed. You know what I'm saying? But in this case, Luigi kills Brian Thompson, allegedly. And immediately social media is just flooded with people saying, yes, he did it, which I'm not totally convinced. And then number two.
Well, you don't even know if those people are really people. I don't know if you heard, but Facebook is saying that now they're going to actually create freaking bot accounts, which I'm just saying, holy Christ, how is it even going to be social anymore?
Well, right. And on SNL, you know, they mention Luigi's name on SNL, and the studio audience bursts into a huge amount of applause. That, you know, that's not an accident. You know what I mean?
But could you see the uncomfort in the guy's face? He was, you know, like for a quick second, you see it, and I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, well, you know, the people in power that tell you what you need to say, you know. Look, the strings that were pulling that little puppet who was on SNL that evening, you know, you could see him temporarily.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think that this is part of a bigger psyop, because at the end of the day, isolated political assassinations are not going to get us healthcare, right? We need systemic change. And the response of the establishment and mainstream media to the Medicare for All marches that happened. Do you remember that 2021?
Oh yeah, I remember with Jimmy Dore, and I was like, that's very good. That
right
now, or it's, you know, it's a very deadly pandemic or whatever, and this is a time when we should be talking about healthcare.
Yeah, one
But
single box.
yeah, we all knew how that was going to go.
Right, went to one march, and mainstream media talked about that endlessly. The Medicare for All marches are Nazi. Jimmy Dore is a white supremacist for criticizing AOC. And it was like having these peaceful marches was considered this huge crime on the part of Jimmy Dore, on the part of the establishment. The Medicare for All marches.
And I haven't heard anybody else say this, but ever since, you could say really Occupy Wall Street, but it really got cranked up when Trump was elected. The the white privilege and all the problems of the world are hailed down by rich white man, blah 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 blah. Look at this, Brian Thompson, literally rich guy, CEO, goddamn Wonder Bread white. And I've never seen so many nice things the media's ever said about a guy like that in the past 10, 15 years.
Well, I mean, I
was like, wow, ain't it funny how things go? But really, it just, to me, that's my wife and I will have a disagreement. I think the world sees class and then race is downstream of class.
Yeah. Well,
she disagrees. She thinks it's the other way.
I would agree with you, and that that nobody wants to talk about class, and that because of that,
nobody does. It's very comfortable.
Yeah, and that if you talk about white privilege, you talk about gender, you talk about LGBT, you get a grant and an award, and that's everyone's impressed with you. But if you talk about class from a class standpoint, that makes everyone very, very uncomfortable. It's just almost politically incorrect, and I think you're absolutely right. But listen, Matt. I don't disagree with you about Brian Thompson and all the people who died at his hands and how it's unfair that there's sympathy for him. I'm with you on all of that, but I'm just saying I don't think individual isolated acts of violence are the answer, and that I think that the establishment is kind of subtly promoting him for not good reasons. That's basically my permission. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, it does. I don't like the idea of violence, but it certainly got people talking. And it's a shame that it cost this man his life for people to talk about it, because you would think that just the dire circumstances of a $400,000 goddamn medical bill or whatever would get people talking and saying, hey, something's broken here. We give our money to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every other country around the world. A lot of these other countries have free healthcare.
We'll tell you what, Matt, I will mail you a free copy of my book since you came on and had this great chat with me. So
thank you.
Email me, calebmoppin@gmail. Just send me your address and I will send you a free copy of the book. So thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks for coming on, and good luck. And my best wishes to you and your wife. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Yep. All right. Well, that was great. Great to talk to Matt. Phil, how you doing?
Hey, Caleb. How are you?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm hanging in. Long time no see.
Very good. Yeah, well, hey, your beard grew longer since the last time I saw you, right?
Yeah,
not as long as it was in Chicago. You had quite a long beard out in Chicago, right? Did you see yourself in the end of the year video in Chicago with the big beard?
Yeah. We've been doing a lot of work with CPI.
Yeah, it's great. New Year's Eve, huh? New York City.
Yes.
Staying out of Manhattan. I don't want to be anywhere near the Times Square. Oh my goodness, that's not the place to be.
They tell you if you can avoid Times Square area, avoid it. They're expecting over 1 million people in Times Square.
Wow, over 1 million? Wow.
Yeah, over 1 million. But
I'm looking out my window. They're getting rained on, so I'm glad I'm not one of them. Wow.
I just wanted to say, I apologize for not being able to come on Sundays, but I've been trying to recuperate, from my last illness. So
sure. Well, you got people in the chat praying for you, Phil. You're a beloved member of our community, and thank you. Thank you for all that you've done, and good luck with everything. And I will be seeing you at the inauguration.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say next. Everyone that can come, please come to the inauguration. The inauguration events are going to be absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, here, I'll put the poster on the screen. Yes, it's going to be a great event in DC on Inauguration Day. It's going to be absolutely awesome. You know, it's going to be good food too, because the hotel is charging us a food minimum. Oh, you're giving me a little feedback here, Phil. Here, I'll mute you. The hotel is charging us a food minimum. So the food is going to be good. We're going to have food for at least 100 people. So come and get this great food buffet. It's going to be good stuff. We're talking like filet mignon, salmon, etc. Go ahead, Phil. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I said, I heard you're going to have filet mignon.
Yeah, well, we have to meet the food minimum. The hotel is charging us like $8,000. We have to have $8,000 worth of food there. So in order to have the event, or they won't open on inauguration day. So come get the food. It'll be a big waste of food if people don't come. So
yeah. And I also wanted to say I disagree with the gentleman from Titusville. Okay. You know, killing is wrong in any circumstance. You know, I mean, Brian Thompson, yeah, you know, he was a CEO of a healthcare, you know, insurance company. I'm actually having problems with my insurance company right now, you know, but that does not mean, you know, that a gentleman, you know, and I use that term lightly, you know, I'll put person, you know, that goes up and callously kills another human being is not a hero. He is not a person to look up to. He is not, you know, I would say a human being, you know, because, you know, the good Lord, you know, gave us, you know, the free reign to choose between right and wrong. You know,
right. I don't want to live in a society where someone decides that I'm bad or you're bad and has the right to just kill you, right? I mean, that's just not how society works, right? We have laws, we have procedures. I mean, the social contract is that, you know, no one kills me when I'm walking down the street, no matter what they think of me. And in exchange, I don't do that to other people. And it's pretty basic. And if we create a situation where, I mean, where people can just kill other people because they don't agree with them, that's not a good situation. And yes, there's obviously a lot of people who die wrongfully in all kinds of circumstances, but we don't really want this. And what scares me is that it's the far left crowd. Here, I'll mute you so we're getting feedback. It's the far left crowd that are cheering him. These are people that already think that if you're against abortion or against gay marriage, they can get you fired from your job. They can, you know, they can call up your employers and all of that. So now we're taking it to the next level. Now, if they decide you're bad, they can kill you. I don't think so. I'm not for that. What do you think?
No, well, you know, the thing that separates us from animals, you know, is our free will, you know, and I mean, you know, we have the ability to choose whether, you know, we're going to live by morality standards, you know, and whether, you know, we're going to be able to separate our anger and hatred with morality. You know, I mean, it's just wrong what this guy Luigi, whatever his name is.
He's not convicted yet, and I'm not sure he did it. Right? I'm seeing some evidence that it may not be him, but regardless, whoever did it, you know, the answer to the healthcare situation, we need to build a mass movement of people coming together and organizing to get a new healthcare system where healthcare is guaranteed to the people and insurance companies don't have the right to deny care. That's what we need. And I see this act of senseless violence, individual terror, as something that'll prevent us from, it'll make it harder to build the movement that we need. So I don't support it. So
exactly.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for coming on. It's always fun to have you. And I will see you when I see you. If not Sunday, I will see you in DC. Sound good?
Well, hopefully Sunday.
Hopefully Sunday. All right.
You know,
see you soon. Yep. All right. Luke Hill, how you doing?
Hello. Good.
What's on your mind tonight?
Now, I want to talk a little bit about Trump.
Okay.
I think the people who chose him or were for him will be very disappointed because I don't think he will bring peace to Ukraine or to Gaza or anywhere else.
Well,
That's my opinion.
I hope you're wrong, but you could be right. You could be right. Donald Trump might not do a single one of the good things that he promised to do. I do not rule that out, and I think that certainly is possible. But my job, I feel, is to try my hardest to push him to do at least some of the good things he promised to do, even if he doesn't do them, and to win over and engage with the people who voted for him because they want him to do those things. That's why I'm headed to the inauguration, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, what makes you think he won't? I'm just throwing this out there. What makes you think he won't?
The people who he chose in the cabinet.
Okay.
The Minister of Defense, the new ambassador. The list is on, and I have no good feeling about it. But the good feeling is that the people who want change. That's the most positive thing now about America.
Well, let me ask you though, Tulsi Gabbard. Not good on Israel, Palestine, not a friend of the Palestinians, but has said many times. She talked about the biolabs in Ukraine. She talked about peace with North Korea. She's been particularly outspoken as a peace activist. She met with Syrian President Bashar Assad and stuff, and she is who Trump has picked for Director of National Intelligence. Does that give you any inspiration?
Yes, and John F. Kennedy is also a good pick. But the other ones, I have no trust. Sorry.
All right. Well, and then there's Kash Patel, right? Who is this, outspoken critic of the FBI. And then there's Robert Kennedy, who has been very outspoken in his opposition to escalating with Russia, who, he's picked for the Department of Health. And I don't know. I feel like there's still some good people in there. Will they last? I don't know. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, awful guy. Horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible. A neoconservative in every conceivable way. And, we may not get a single good thing out of Trump, but we have to try. And I'm not ready to give up. I feel like my job is to be there in DC and push, you know what I mean? And push as much as I can, and engage with the base, that's kind of where I'm at. Are you in Canada?
No, I'm in Holland, in the Netherlands.
Oh, in the Netherlands. Okay. Yeah. Very good. It must be really late over there.
It is now 3:00.
Oh, okay. It's not that late. All right. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm hoping, there's rumors that Trump and Elon Musk have already made some kind of deal with Ukraine, but then I heard Russia say that the deal that was offered, they're not going to go with. And that makes sense. You never just take the first deal, right? I mean, negotiation is a hard game, but we'll just have to see what happens. Trump said a lot of good things, but Trump has also said some contradictory things. And we just have to be strategic. That's kind of my attitude about it. So I'm hoping that things will get better with Trump, but even if they don't, I still got to keep going. We got to build a movement because it's popular power and mobilizing that changes things, So, and that's what I am critical of a lot of the people on the internet who've already given up. He hasn't even taken office yet. Let him take office and let us down, and then we can call him out for that. But, the fact that he continued to talk about peace on the Korean Peninsula, even when the Wall Street Journal attacked him for it. The Wall Street Journal said, stop bragging about it. It didn't work, but he kept doing it. He kept bragging about it, right? And the fact that he said John Bolton and Mike Pompeo will have no role in his new administration. That is very good too, right? Because they are the guys that pushed him to be hostile to Venezuela, that pushed him to do the bad things regarding Iran that he did. So I don't know. I think there's still room for hope, but at the end of the day, these kind of things are determined by the balance of forces, right? It really depends how much Trump is under attack, how much he needs popular support. It's going to depend on a lot of factors. Trump's first term was a disaster. It wasn't as bad as what we had under Biden, but it wasn't great. Murdering Qasem Soleimani and moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem and sending lethal aid to Ukraine. He didn't escalate with Ukraine anywhere near what Biden did, but it was still pretty bad. So I don't know. We will just have to see. But my feeling is I want to be part of the conversation, and I want to try and amplify anything good that Trump says or does. And so that's where I'm at. So yeah, you're observing from the Netherlands.
The good thing was with this election, the people want to change, and I hope they want to keep it.
Very good.
And organize a little bit, but because I think most Americans, they vote always against their own interests.
Yes, that is true.
Champions in it.
Absolutely.
World champions in it. Sorry.
No, all good. All right. Well, listen, Brian, if you want to put your camera on so I can see your face, I will bring you on. There's someone in the who's come on, who's entered the studio, and it calls himself Brian. So you just need to show your face, Brian, so I can bring you on. I got a couple other things to talk about. I've got the new book about Brian Thompson. We've talked about that a lot. But then I also, yesterday, my wife and I, it was my birthday, and my wife and I went to the movies. We actually went to the movie theater, we went and saw Nosferatu. So I'll probably give you all my thoughts on the movie Nosferatu at some point. If Brian can turn on his camera, I can bring Brian on. But until then, Peter, hey, how's it going,
Hey,
Peter Coffin?
Happy New Year, everybody. I want to stop in and say, yo, Happy New Year to everybody and
Very
to you,
good.
obviously.
Thank you.
I wanted, you said you're going to talk about your book. I figured, let's talk about your book.
Let's talk about the amazing cover you designed. Let's talk about that. Yeah,
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Yeah.
No, I was pretty psyched about that. Like, I put the little red cross on the instead of the and symbol. I think I'm very clever, is what I'm saying.
You are. No, it's
health
great.
thing, because the health thing, just give people a little thing to think about. There was a point that was talked about in the previous gentleman who was talking about this topic, where he was coming up with what was it? He said that he was sort of talking about how there is a conversation that's been started by this. And I wanted to start talking about your book from the perspective that no, there has not been any conversation that has been started. Healthcare has been an issue in this country that has been loudly argued about for 2 decades, at least as long as I have been an adult, which is now too long. It's your birthday. You're not far behind me, but I'm definitely ahead, and hopefully we'll stay ahead because there's only one way to lag behind on that one. But yeah, I just think it's really important to say there hasn't been a conversation that's been started. The conversation that's been started is just an ongoing conversation. Like you brought up Jimmy Dore. There's obviously a conversation going on because he got in trouble for pushing that conversation.
Right.
I feel like it's important to say these things because there's people who I think really they see this and they think that this is somehow an aberrant event in like the advocacy of healthcare, and it's not. It isn't in any way. It is an aberrant event in the idea that the media and the state uses certain images to get different things to happen. Whether or not this is somehow planned from somebody or a conspiracy or anything like that, we have no idea. Like you said, we don't really even know if Luigi is the killer. I personally don't think he is.
I will say, I think that at least the decision after it happened to make Luigi like internet famous and a hero to a bunch of people, that was not accidental. I have never seen anything like this. This is not normal.
No, when you start from the point of entry, which is the killing and the arrest of this young man, this is where you see all this collaboration, because it's a unified attempt to turn this man into both a folk hero and a villain. I'm writing a documentary about the 2 Joker movies that talks about this. What happened with the Joker was actually very similar to what has happened to Luigi Mangione. Except for Luigi, like I said, I think he might be being framed. I don't know. Obviously, that's not something we can know until we've seen all the evidence. But I think that you've also addressed a lot of this in the book, and I think it's worth talking about that a little bit because people can get the book currently.
Yeah.
It's on Lulu, which it sucks that it's on Lulu as opposed to Amazon right now. But yeah, I think people.
Yeah, I think it'll be on Amazon soon. It's a different. Yeah, we'll see. But enough about that. But yeah, no, you're right. And I guess I really, it just frustrates me that there's so little knowledge of what mass organizing and mass movements have built. And I really, that's what people really need to know. The fact that those good paying jobs that we're always hearing about, those good paying industrial jobs, once paid what fast food workers make, and then workers occupied their factories and formed industrial unions and had sit-down strikes, etc. And that's how they got to be good-paying jobs. People just don't know the history of mass movements, and that Hollywood very much, it's always kind of an individual hero who does things. So it makes sense that people would jump at the Luigi thing, because that's what we've been told. That's what changes the world, is somebody becomes a Superman or something. You know what I'm saying? And and so it disappoints me, because I just wish people could know about everything we've won. I mean, that's, the textbook that we've got, Out of the Movement to the Masses and all of that. People need to know about the history of mass organizing, how we won, how we got what we have,
Well, and I mean, think about it from this perspective. You talk a fair amount about, I mean, you have your own specific stages, but going back to Mao's stages of Revolutionary War, there's 3 stages. The first is organization and consolidation, and the second is progressive expansion by terror. That's this. This is stage 2 stuff being done in stage 1. We have not organized. We have not consolidated. We have nothing. There's no war. It's a spontaneous action by some random person. We have not organized or consolidated. And a lot of people are like, well, why don't we want somebody to do this? Isn't this part of attacking the ruling class? No, it really isn't.
Yeah.
If you are spontaneously acting, as a lot of anarchists think, this is the anarchist line of thinking. It's spontaneous revolution, which is not going to happen, by the way. It's an absurd prospect. But they think that things like this will inspire people to rise up against the ruling class. And no, it might inspire people, but they'll be inspired on the idea that this guy's a bad guy and we got to get the bad guys. And the fact is, bad is a relative word. It is. Right. I made a video about scams recently, and I talk a lot about how the word scam has no concrete definition.
Right.
This is another example of that. There's a reason why we need to focus on class, because that actually gives us a material, objective connection between certain people. We don't care. Like, you could, let's say Brian Thompson was the most moral healthcare CEO that's ever been, that they repeatedly emphasize that they need to approve more stuff. They can't deny it, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter, because that guy is eventually not going to be the CEO anymore. Right. That slot will be vacant at some point. And another guy, in fact, they could fire him if that was what he was saying, and they'd put somebody there that would deny healthcare. It's the fact that people think that this is something that you can be addressed by going after the bad guys. They don't understand how interchangeable the bad guys are.
Yeah, and that the problems are systemic, and that's kind of the liberal mindset. So, like, they're always boycotting something. There's always something to boycott this week. I had a liberal professor who I remember, he said, if everyone would just be good, we wouldn't need any socialism or anything. If people would all just drive hybrids and make, consumer good choices, everything would be fine. No, and
that's they come at you with that stuff, and they act like the good part of communism is the gray jumpsuits, and it's not. That's not the part of communism that anybody wants. That's not the part of Marxism that anybody who's serious about it wants. Or innovationism, for example. We have come up with this sort of offshoot where we are attempting to build on the basis of building, as a matter of fact. And it's interesting because I've had such a different response since we've been using it. I was talking to my mom. I told her about it, and she's like, innovationism, huh? That sounds way better. Could you send me the books?
Right. Well, hey.
And it's like, yeah, sure. Because I'm always saying stuff that she likes, but she doesn't like the C word. So it's kind of like, all right, I'll send you the books.
Yeah. Well, my reaction, I mean, the people, and there have been a fair number of them who just are so triggered by us not using the C word anymore. And it's like, what matters to you, right? Our beliefs haven't changed. We're just calling them something different. We're just making a point of not embracing an aesthetic we used to embrace. And it's like, there's plenty of people who embrace that word and aesthetic who believe very, 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 very different things than what we believe. So would you rather we be like them, Or and so for some of them, the answer I think is yes, right? That
obviously some people would like that.
if we were some wacky Trotskyite group who was engaged in anti-Russia activism and was protesting people that we thought were transphobic and breaking their store windows or something. I mean, but we used hammers and sickles, they'd be fine with it. Like that's weird to me. That's just odd, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I do think there was a time where I was the one that was always saying we need to use that word because there was an opening, right? There was an opening in American politics 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago. There was kind of a vacancy with that word. So going out there and loudly saying, we are this, and we'll teach you all about this was like an opening, right? It's like there was a vacancy. There was an opening there for someone to be the communist in America. That is long gone, right?
Well,
nowadays,
the people that filled that opening are not exactly the best people.
Right now, I mean, that opening has been filled at this point, and attempting to get a piece of it is a fruitless effort because clearly, the forces that are claiming it, and they're Democrat. I mean, we're talking like woke Democrats, you know what I mean? And I think, there are some people that are trying to claim it maybe with some kind of other agenda, but good luck. I don't see that going anywhere, and at the same time, there are a lot of Americans who do really want to hear what we have to say, and they all hate communists because they think communists are woke Democrats. So we just have to make a strategic pivot. It's just, I think it's the right thing to do. But I mean, we're not going to lie about who we are, right? I mean, that's the thing. We're going to be very open about what we believe, but there are some things. Look, I mean, I have come to the realization that the reason communism in America has really not taken off since the end of the Second World War is because in its essence, communism was always meant to be like a trade union adjacent movement.
Yes.
And Marx makes that clear in the manifesto. Lenin makes that clear. It was supposed to be a wing of trade unionism. Now, Bolshevism was like when the labor movement divided, you had the pro-imperialist social democrats. They were the anti-imperialist, but it was still a labor union thing. And now in a gig economy, when workers are very individual and they're struggling each day, I mean, the labor unions are not the hub of working class power they once were. They still have a role. I'm not against them, but they're not, and so that in and of itself kind of creates a problem. And you've done all this work about AI and how like we're just going to have to interact with the world differently because machines can do almost everything now. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, a large part of the gig economy aspect of it is they figured out kind of a way to make it not necessary to deal with labor unions. When you do this at will, like not just at will employment, but at will, like work today, you press a button on an app to work today, and you're considered, legally speaking, a self-proprietor of a small business, which you're not. You're an employee with like worse conditions. It's a legal loophole to have employees that can't unionize and can't and also have the pride of the temporarily embarrassed millionaire.
Oh, no, I'll tell you, when you're a contractor, you have like no rights. I remember when I was in Cleveland, I was looking for a job one summer. And so I got a job getting petitions to legalize strip clubs in Cleveland. Right. And so my job was just walk around the streets of Cleveland, getting a petition to keep strip clubs legal. They told me $1 a signature. So I thought, okay, I had 400 or 500 signatures and they never paid me. And so I called the Department of Labor and they said, now, okay, we can take action. But did you sign something to say that you are an individual contractor? Yep. Well, we can't help you. Maybe take them to small claims court. I got fucked out of $400, right? I had no rights because I'm an independent contractor. I mean, and there's some strip club lobby in Cleveland that owes me $400 if you're watching. But there you go.
Like, the thing is that these Uber drivers, the Door Dashers, all of these people, they're being told that they're living the dream, that they get to work when they want, and they get to, they don't have a boss. They're their own boss. They're told that they're small business owners, and none of these things are true. They're just employees with several legal stipulations that give the employer the ability not to treat them like an employee.
Right.
And it's terrible. I mean, like I said, and even YouTube is that. Like
Yeah.
most people who are making YouTube videos, like a lot of people who follow like communism and things like that, they consider YouTube creators all petite bourgeoisie. And that's not, it's not true. I mean, some of them are, some of them socialize labor, they hire other people, but it's a contracting situation. And even very successful YouTube creators that are making videos themselves are just gig workers. Like, as much as they might be doing very well, but I mean, they have set up the economy in a manner where it's extremely normal on every level for people to not have any rights as an employee, particularly making labor unions ineffective. This is 100% to the point that you're making. We have to refocus on some different areas. As you know, Marx, as descendants of Marx, we have to recognize that those conditions aren't the same anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole point of production thing, that's a big part of like Marxism. I remember during Occupy Wall Street, the group I was with, I think took the correct stance of saying 99% and 1% means the working class and the capitalists,
Yeah.
But there were a lot of like Trotskyite groups that would go to Occupy Wall Street and get very, very fired up about it's not 99% and 1%. It's the bourgeoisie versus the proletarians. And you all are petty bourgeois, and it's the factory workers that are going to make the revolution. And, we shouldn't be doing this. We should be going and organizing the factory workers. And I remember there was like a single mom who was like in school, and these Trotskyites told her she was petty bourgeois. Like, and she's like living off her student loans while she's raising her daughter. I'm like, how is she petty bourgeois? That doesn't even make any sense.
She's a debtor. That's
yeah,
literally all she is, a debtor.
Yeah, she's just running up a bill. I mean, that she's gonna have to pay out of her wages. It's just odd, and it's that whole point of production thing. I mean, Marx, what he was writing about in Capital is that as technology advances, the number of workers involved is going to be fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. And that's going to cause big economic problems because only human labor creates surplus value. So the capitalists are going to get less and less of a rate of profit off of each item, and that's going to cause all these problems. But ultimately, there's just going to be so many unemployed people, so many people that don't have a place in the system, that they're going to band together and seize control of the means of production and force them to work in a rational way to the benefit of everybody, right? I mean, that's what Marx is writing about, and that's particularly brilliant. But in his day, that looked like we're going to organize the workers of the factory and all. But that's just like, what Marx wrote about is so much more true than ever he could have ever realized. I don't think he envisioned capitalism lasting this long. I think
he didn't.
So he like the technological advances that we have, he never could have even imagined. So we're living in this, like, we're heading towards like a capitalism without workers, which is going to necessitate a socialist revolution. I mean, because if there's no place at the assembly line, there's no place for the bulk of humanity. Nelson Peary, I really like Nelson Peary. He talks about this in his book, and he had the theory of the precariat. He started talking about the precariat, and his book, The Future is Up to Us. It's not on my shelf there, but it's a good book. The Future is Up to Us. It's free online. You can find a PDF of it. Yeah. And he started talking about this, about how he argued that it wouldn't be the proletariat who would make the revolution. He argued that there was a new class being created of the permanently unemployed, right? Of like kind of excess people, right? And the proletarians are wage workers, and then you think of lumpen or like criminal elements. But he was arguing that there was going to be this new layer of people that are technically proletarians, but their ability to sell their labor power is so limited that they'll really have no choice but to
permanent labor reserve army, basically.
Yeah, right. And that's not the same as lumpen, because lumpen is like people that are kind of outside of the working class and are kind of leeching off the working class. That's kind of a different formulation. And that's what he argued. And I mean, everything Marx wrote about is very, very true. But it also points to, you can't do what Marxists have been doing for the last 100 years. It's not going to work,
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, he's thinking about things as they were then. And he predicted, obviously incorrectly, that the United States, over the course of a few decades, would eventually have a socialist revolution. That obviously didn't happen.
Right.
But he also didn't predict, imperial. Well, I mean, him and Engels did discuss some preliminary imperialism.
Yeah, but they got it wrong. They thought
no, it was. I mean, there's some things that Lenin based some of what he was saying on, but it's a very different form of capitalism than the capitalism they're talking about. And we've progressed beyond that. I mean, I'm not to say that we're in a different stage. It's certainly imperialism / globalism, as we've been calling it lately.
Yeah.
it's certainly the same stage. It's just, it's very, the basis of it is shifting around constantly. And that's a characteristic of imperialism that Lenin talks about. It shifts around a lot. And we have shifted around a lot. It's just, it's stuff that people weren't talking about 100 years, 150 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I am very, very grateful that I discovered, those old books from the Great Depression where they talked about poverty amid plenty, overproduction, all of that. And, I mean, that is such a big part of what Marx was writing about. Socialism, Utopian and Scientific by Engels, the Communist Manifesto. It's all about this problem of poverty created by abundance. That's like a central part of what Marx is talking about. And none of these Marxists talk about it. It's
the specific reason AI is important to talk about.
Yes.
I mean, they could have never imagined automation to the extent of artificial intelligence. Never. And we argue about, like, should we even call it artificial intelligence? Think about what Marx would think if he saw Chat GPT. It would be absolutely beyond his comprehension. Who is on the other end? He would ask.
And it makes the case for what he was really aiming for, this kind of high-tech society where everyone has enough and work is purely voluntary. It makes that pretty obvious in the future, right? It's not hard to imagine a world now where
it's the material basis for that.
Yeah. I mean, if AI can do everything, machines can do everything now. So why don't we have a rational, beautiful society where people can just live in splendor because machines can do everything? Well, we don't have that because the machines are operated to maximize profits for owners. And if you can't sell yourself to a boss, you have no way to exist. And it's just completely nuts. You have
all these dorky little artists complaining about AI and about how it's stealing from them. AI isn't stealing from you. It's the relation of production that has existed your entire life. That's what's stealing from you. Capitalism, in particularly in its imperialist globalist stage. That's the problem.
Right.
And to bring it back to your book, the reason why people need to read it is because, not just because that, you don't discuss AI in it. You don't discuss a lot of these things, but there is a major roadblock in what is in, like, your book discusses a major roadblock, and that is this sort of false consciousness as to how to revolution.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that that's weaponized against us.
Yes.
They don't get it. And that's what you plainly explain in this book with historical examples, like you said, Operation Gladio, the Years of Lead. These are specific things in history that could easily be repeated off of the basis of the current events. And people need to understand that you're not necessarily saying, like, oh, they rounded up a guy to go kill a healthcare CEO. That's not, I mean, it could be true. I'm not saying it couldn't, but that's not the point. The point is there's a specific set of events that can be used very easily to get a certain set of results. And that's what this is.
Yeah. If the political division and polarization in America as it currently exists escalates to political murders happening on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis, we're all fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kiss your rights goodbye. You can kiss your freedom of protest goodbye. Also, people are not going to go to protest because they're not going to want to get shot. And that's not a good situation at all, right? I mean, if Luigi type stuff becomes a regular occurrence in America, we are all screwed. And I wish people could get that, right? That this isn't, I've had people compare him to John Brown. I've had people compare him to, I'm like, no. This is senseless violence. This is individual. This is one guy going out and killing one guy and making it a political thing, and a bunch of people saying, oh, well, I guess it was political. I guess it's a good thing. I mean, this is not.
Yeah, we don't even have proof that it's actually political.
Right. Well, there's that too. Yeah, right. I mean, there's some kind of manifesto or something, but that's.
Yeah, but that could easily be, like, it was short, and it could easily have been something that was prepared and planted very quickly, to be frank. It wouldn't take much effort at all. And we've seen that more than once in the past. So it's not like, I mean, that isn't to say it's not possible that Luigi was fed up with the healthcare system and shot this guy. That's certainly possible, but it's not even really relevant. Why? It's relevant how it's being used. That's what's relevant.
Well, here's what I don't understand. He's super physically fit, right? I mean, this guy is like built, and then I'm hearing that the motivation is supposedly he had like back pain or something. How does that work? Like he's got this chronic like back injury or something. And it's like, he looks like a movie star, you know, I mean, they got all these pictures of him shirtless. I'm like, wait a second, this guy's supposed to be like crippled in his back or something. And
something doesn't add up about that.
No, it doesn't add up.
It's very clear to me that something doesn't add up about that.
Yeah, he does not look like someone who has a chronic health condition. Like something's off, you know. Yeah. And it just happens to be someone who's just so, you know, I mean, this guy's a movie star, good looking, and then I guess his family, right? What they own a chain of senior centers.
Yeah.
What?
Nursing homes.
Yeah, and so like, and they apparently didn't agree with like one of the decisions United Healthcare made or something. Like, part of me wonders if this is just like an internal like corporate, you know, thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My first instinct was that it was some kind of a blackmail hit. That was my immediate thought when I saw what happened.
Yeah. Well, and that Brian Thompson, I guess, was going to testify. That's what Alex Jones raised, is that he was scheduled to testify, right? And that he himself was caught up in some kind of insider trading scandal or something, right? And he was going to testify before Congress. And so people are wondering if he was just knocked off for that. And I mean, who knows? Who really knows at this point, right? Who knows? You know, but like
it's being used though.
Yeah, one thing I actually didn't talk about this in the book, but it's in the COINTELPRO papers, which was published. They talked about during the 60s, there was an FBI agent who went by the nickname Tommy the Traveler, and he would go from college campus to college campus, and he looked like a hippie, and he would show up and he would claim he was a leader of Students for Democratic Society, which he was not. And he would he knew the names to drop and the things to say. And then he would train all the local activists in how to make bombs. And then they would go to set off those bombs, and then they would go get arrested and go to prison. The FBI had this guy who just went from college campus to college campus, basically setting people up to go to prison for trying to blow stuff up. It's called entrapment. And
you can even go with recent examples of entrapment that are very similar. The Gretchen Whitmer thing, that I don't remember exactly the details, but that was there was evidence that one of the people who was planning to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, was an FBI person.
No, they were acquitted, if I remember correctly.
They were acquitted for it.
The militiamen or the Bugaloos who were charged with trying to kidnap her, they were acquitted because they proved the crime would never have happened if the FBI hadn't, set them all up. And it's like, if we think that, and that's when you talked about like the naivete of people who think, there's a lot of people who have it in their minds that what we need to do is just make everyone understand that we need to be violent. It's like, no, actually, that's the FBI is going around trying to convince people to be violent all the time.
Decades.
Right, to justify their budget and to justify their crackdown on legit peaceful organizing. So no, that is not what we need to do, is to convince people to be violent. Actually, the government's doing that for us constantly. We're trying to stop them from doing it. That's the other thing. Someone in the chat, I saw this. I do not know what to make of it. Did you see the story? This just came out today, right? So they did a bust in Virginia. This guy had a huge amount of bombs and weapons and all of that. And he was part of something like, I guess there's some weird internet culture where you join a group and you self-mutilate, and it was like the Order of 9 Angles, and it's like there's cruelty to animals and child molesting, some kind of weird internet evil thing this guy was part of, and he got busted, and he had loads of guns and weapons or something, and it's some kind of weird internet neo-Nazi satanic something or other, right? And every so often they bust somebody who's tied in with that, right? And there was a guy here in New York, I forget what he did, right? And it's like some kind of weird, scary internet culture, right? Where it's like these guys, like they like find teenagers and blackmail them to try and get them to kill themselves, and it's like some weird psychopathic internet culture, right? And I guess they're alleging this guy who was planning terrorist attacks was part of this, right? And the more I look at that, the more I wonder what's really going on, right? Because, if there's these whole, they make it sound like there's these whole internet communities where they're kind of trying to see how far they can get people to do evil shit, Yeah.
Yes.
And I wonder what's going on. I will say, I debated a guy named Augustus Sol Invictus, right? He was like a white supremacist.
I think I remember this.
Yeah, I debated him, and I am convinced after having debated him, I don't think he was serious. I think that he was an FBI honeypot, because a lot of what he did was not promoting white supremacist politics. It was just kind of sending out serial killer, creepy serial killer vibes. You know what I'm saying? To attract attention. And I almost wonder if he was going around, looking for who would jump at that. A lot of the stuff, if you look over his bio, it doesn't make sense. It's like, this guy isn't a white supremacist. He's just like trying to get everyone to think he's a serial killer. Like, why would he do that? You know what I'm saying? And having debated him and kind of seen the people he was kind of associating with, who didn't seem like, again, they didn't seem like legit white supremacists. They seemed like, internet performers or something. And then he was one of the speakers at Charlottesville. And, you have to wonder how many weird psychological operations are going on. Like this guy, I mean, the more I started reading the details about this guy they just arrested in Virginia, I'm just like, okay, so there's these whole weird internet communities where they're like trying to convince teenagers to slit their wrists or something. It's weird. The more you look at it, it's like something's off. Something's really, really off. And it's like, and when you read about, and then in my book, I do talk about MK Ultra, right? And how
that is in the book.
Well, and the more you look into that stuff, I mean, they were very much trying to figure out the art of controlling people and trying how they can manipulate people into doing things they want to do. So,
but they stopped.
Oh, totally. Yeah, they totally stopped. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
that's why I brought up Gretchen Whitmer, because there's so many people, you start talking about this stuff and like, well, that was back in the 60s. They don't do that anymore.
Oh, never.
Yes, they do. They provably do.
No, these murders that have happened in Russia since the special military operation. There's been a number of people in Russia that they get Facebook or they get Twitter or whatever, and they make a best friend who gives them some gifts or something like that, and then gradually tries to get them to do stuff. And that that's part of why it's really important to do in real life organizing and not just be online. I am convinced there's a lot of people who get manipulated into psyops because they make some friend on the internet who they don't know who they are. And, and that there's a lot of kind of very like maybe shy people who don't have in real life friends, so the internet is the place they can connect with somebody, and then they reveal some information, and then they're blackmailable or they and then that's how they get manipulated into doing evil shit, because if you look at it, a lot of these, these bombings and things that have happened in Russia, what happened was it was somebody who made a friend with somebody online that they didn't realize was a Ukrainian or American intelligence officer, who then was able to convince them to do stuff. Often they didn't even know what they were doing, apparently, right? They thought they were doing one thing and they were actually doing something else, and that manipulating people's behavior is something that they're apparently learning to do. I mean, I'm not a parent. You are. You must be terrified as a parent. I mean, I couldn't imagine raising kids in the world of social media. I mean, it must be very scary. I
mean, it is. I mean, back in the day, I am a catfishing victim. And that's
similar to what we're describing here. Yeah,
exactly. Like, if you can be fooled by some random with no resources who's just kind of fucking around on the internet, imagine an entire intelligence apparatus.
Yeah. No, it's very scary. And so that's why, again, I do have a rule that you're not really real to me until I meet you in real life. You know what I'm saying? Until I actually can sit face to face with you, you're not real. Right. And there may be people hearing this that are just like heartbroken. I'm sorry. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying you're an FBI agent, but until I'm like in the room with you, it's really hard for me to really think that you're real. You know what I'm saying? That's just
I mean, you can't really trust a lot of people. I mean, to me, it's worth, affording people a certain amount of trust. And I do that. But I agree. It's very difficult. Other than I would say I have several exceptions to that. But I would also say generally that is how I operate as well.
Well, and also the first time I met you was in Austin, Texas. And I will say we clicked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there were people that we also met in Austin, Texas, who it was the first time we'd met them in real life, and we didn't click. You know what I mean? And I look at how things have gone, and honestly, the in real life vibe really says a lot. You know what I'm saying?
It does.
It really does. Really does. So
you're playing with fire with that one.
Oh yeah, well, whatever. I mean, who knows?
I'm hesitating.
Yeah, right. But it's true though. I mean, and that you know, when I met you, and I mean, you know, and I mean, we've been collaborating.
No, when we met, it was very clear that we were both interested in exactly the same thing. Like
yeah,
that
and
was
we're both real people. I mean, we're both,
Yes.
you know, yeah. So, and yeah, I mean, and yeah, and you know, the other thing that I have noticed a lot, and I don't know what to do with this, and part of this, I think, you know, on the one hand, sometimes people are just shy, and that's okay, that they have a right to be shy.
Yeah.
Sometimes people, yeah, but there's always like a few people that I know, and then when I'm coming to their area, all of a sudden they vanish, you know, and I always wonder what's that's about. Are they just shy, or is this there's something else going on? And I have no way of knowing. You know what I'm saying? But I always get weirded out by that. It's like, you know, you're my biggest fan, you're in my chat, and then I finally am coming to your area, and I have an in real life event in your area, and then you go dark, and I never hear from you again.
Yeah.
I always wonder, were you real? Were you real?
You can't know. Unfortunately, we can't ever know.
Well, we don't.
But I am probably going to go to bed now. But before
well,
I go, I
you're
would
real,
like
so you need sleep.
Yes. No, absolutely. I'm already up later than I intended.
Okay.
To,
Well,
even though it's 2 years.
All right.
But
Well, good luck. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Before I leave, I want to request that everybody in the chat buy the book. It's on Lulu now. The Killing of Brian Thompson, the danger of an American Years of Lead, and 2, cpiusa.org/join-cpi.
Yeah,
it's a very important URL that a lot of people could utilize, and it would definitely benefit them with a lot of the things we've been talking about. Speaking of which, it was awesome talking to you. Thank you for bringing me on. And thanks everybody. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Caleb. Happy New Year, everybody in the chat. Great talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck. Be safe.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Good luck. All right, Brian, thanks for waiting. Peter has a lot to say, and I had a lot to say to him. So thanks for being patient, Brian, in Toronto. How you doing?
Doing well. I mean, you know, what a time to be a Brian.
Oh, yeah? What do you mean?
Yeah. No. I just like the Brian Thompson, right?
Right.
And as it is really astonishing just how quickly people jumped on it, and it's people presume things so quickly. I mean, it like, you know, like, but they're not able to think beyond like just like sudden event, but think in like a, you know, in the big picture and set it in context and like what's, you know, which is, and I understand like they want to, like, yeah, like we should have universal health care. Like we should, you know, these are genuine grievances, but it's just, they're just settling for this easy psychological satisfaction of like, oh yeah, you know, and not thinking like, obviously this kind of thing can have huge blowback and have terrible consequences. It doesn't matter. And so, you know, but yeah, I mean, I generally take a wait and see attitude to all these kind of things, which I think is just, you know, I'm not in my 20s anymore. So.
Oh, well, you're a great musician, Brian, and I'm really excited. You're going to be at our event, playing music at our event in DC, and that's going to be awesome. I'm very excited for your musical abilities. You are very skilled. People can see you in videos of previous events that we have done. It's going to be a great event. But I guess let me ask you, I guess, first of all, what are you reading right now? What's your book of choice?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, this just came in the mail. Domenico Lacerdo, Stalin, History and Critique of a Black Legend, which, you know, I've heard is very fair, right? Like it's, in a sense, like he doesn't sugarcoat anything, but, you know, he critiques basically like misperceptions, right? And that's kind of been a theme of a lot of things I've been reading lately, like kind of, you know, on the level of foreign policy too, like kind of, you know, misconceptions that, right, Americans and Chinese or Chinese and Russians may have of each other. And so much of the work that I see, and certainly what I value in your work, is like cutting through, right? I mean, because that in itself is a huge task, right? Just to kind of adjust the lens so that we can even agree on you know, basic facts and like just kind of be having a conversation at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that's So I'm really excited that you've taken the step of, opening up a really essential conversation with people who are, starting to realize the limitations of kind of business as usual, like the way the American political system is set up, and they're looking for, like that kind of drive for truth and wrestle with it and like get to the truth. Because if it's not that, then what are we doing?
Yeah. Also, I guess I wanted to ask you, have you seen Nosferatu, the new movie?
I have not. I have a friend who's going to see that. If I understand, it's like this Weimar German Dracula, basically, which kind of.
Well, so I went to see it yesterday, and I figured I was going to talk about it. So maybe I'll just talk about it with you here, and it'll be more interesting as you give feedback and give me your thoughts. So I wanted to see this movie because I saw the original. The original was a Weimar Republic movie. It was made, I think, in 1924, 1927. It's a silent film, but it was originally about Dracula, but they couldn't get the rights to say Dracula. It was copyrighted, so they changed it to Count Orlok. So his name is Count Orlok, and they set it in Germany. And the actor that they had play the vampire was this bald guy with like pointy ears, who was kind of like a strange-looking guy named Max, who went by the name Max Schreck, which means like Max Scream, right?
Yeah.
And he's not good looking at all. He's like a kind of a hunched over guy with a bald head and like pointy ears, and he's this kind of scary looking guy with like long fingernails, and they made him the vampire. And the movie itself was considered like a really pioneering work of film. Like one of the big things is like the shadow of his hand is used at various points in a very artistic way, and it's a well-made film. And I saw the film when I was like a kid because I was interested in vampire movies, right? So, and then they remade it in the 70s, and they made it kind of an artistic film with Klaus Kinski that I also really enjoyed. It was actually a pretty well-made film. So I went to see this movie with an open mind. I thought this is going to be interesting. They did something very interesting with it, I will say. When I watch the film, whenever I'm watching a film, I'm always thinking, what is this saying? What are they trying? What is this reflecting about our culture? What is this saying? What I took from this is this film is about mental illness. That's what I took from it. This is a film about the widespread issue of mental illness, the shame surrounding mental illness, the way mental illness affects families. That's what I took from this. That's what this film is about. It's about the mental health epidemic. What I thought was, and possibly a little bit about addiction, but more clearly about mental illness. What I thought was interesting was that, generally vampires are portrayed as sexual, right? They're really good looking, they're sexy, and it's, and the original Dracula novels are pornographic. It was Victorian England. You couldn't write actual porn. So they wrote this thing about this really good looking buff guy who goes into women's bedrooms at nights and bites them on the neck. I mean, it was porn. Everybody knew that at the time, and it was considered like smutty literature. I mean, there was a whole genre of like gothic novels that were considered to be dirty, and Dracula was the most famous of them. And it's written in like first person. It's like the letters of the women. It's like about being bit, and at one point, like Dracula doesn't only just bite them, but like he like rips open his shirt and makes them drink his blood off out of his chest. He pierces his chest. I mean, it's like, come on, like we know what's going on here. It's
this was famously satirized fairly recently in a Key and Peele sketch about sexy vampires.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was in the 1800s. It was about as close to porn as you could get, basically. And it was probably, to be a little R-rated here, it was probably rape porn too. I mean, it was not consensual. You know what I mean? It's and that also it kind of parallels. Dracula is portrayed as he's from Romania. He's from Transylvania. And at that time, the Slavic peoples, and I guess Romanians are not Slavs, but Eastern European folks were portrayed as kind of exotic and uncivilized and barbaric, kind of, right? As the, France and Germany and Britain were like colonizing and taking them over. And they were also portrayed as really, really wild sexual people, right? Like, I believe the word masochist, it comes from a novel by Leopold Sacher-Masoch, who it was about like an Eastern European woman who like, you know, is like a dominatrix or something like that, you know, and it's like, you know, and that like, so people from the, you know, the from Eastern Europe or whatever were considered to be like wild sexual creatures. Dracula is imported from Transylvania, and he's super buff and good looking, and he's, you know, and it's a super sexual story. However, Nosferatu, the 1920s movie, that guy is not good looking at all. I mean, he's like super, super ugly, right? He's this bald guy who's, you know, hunched over and has the fangs, and but what they did with this new movie was they kept like the sexual element of the vampire thing, but they also made the vampire really, really ugly, right? And I thought that was clever, right? You know, he's super, super ugly, but there is like this there's a sexual element to what he does, right? I thought that was very clever. And that basically the premise of the story is this like goth girl, right? And it's Victorian Germany or whatever. This goth girl, when she was a teenage girl, she like, you know, summoned up the demon, the spirit of the vampire, right? And it caused her all kinds of mental health problems. But then, you know, now she's gotten married, and, you know, she started her new life, and she's over her issues or whatever that caused her the sleepwalking and the whatever, right? She's over her hysteria. It's basically hysteria, right? Which was another Victorian era thing. She's over it. She's happily married. Well, then the vampire shows up to ruin her marriage, basically is what it's about, right? And what I took from it is it was like, you know, it's like the kind of angsty goth girl, right? It's like supposed to be about the shame of mental illness, that kind of thing. I thought the best character in the film was William Dafoe plays the Van Helsing character, right? And he did a really good job, I will say. I did not expect it, because he plays like the caring shrink, kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, this girl's been, you know, sleepwalking and having these visions and all of that, and they've been like restraining her to the bed and making her sleep in a corset and all this. And he comes and he's like the first person who's like actually kind of caring to her and friendly to her. And he's also the vampire expert. And I thought that was interesting. I never saw William Dafoe. He's actually kind of a scary guy. I figured he would be like a scary kind of character. But
yeah, he has this very, you know, intense presence and this angular face. And you think of like, but to have him be like this caring,
he plays this like kind of caring, almost like Sigmund Freud, caring, like, you know, kind, compassionate doctor guy who knows all about the vampire legend and all of that. The other thing is the you know, the movie, the original Nosferatu from 1927, right? They many people, you know, people try their hardest to read Nazism into the movie, right? Because it was in Germany before Hitler, and it's very hard to read Nazism into the film. Why the Nazis hated the you know, the Berlin filmmakers and all that. Like, you know, they hated that art. They considered it decadent and ugly and
famously so. Like,
yeah, right. But there's only one thing about that, which is that for some reason there's rats in the movie, right? That like the ship that the vampire comes to Germany on, right? Like all the people on the ship have died of the plague. Right. And then when it like lands in the city, all the people on it are dead. But then a bunch of rats, like thousands of rats, run out of the ship. Right. And so people look at that and they say that's like the Nazi or the German like obsession with cleanliness. And it's like infestation, contagion and all of that. Right. And that it's, you know, and I can see that to some degree, right? I mean, that was in the original, and it is kind of weird. I remember, you know, I had the VHS tape when I was like a teenager. I'm watching this old silent movie, and there's like rats, like thousands of rats on the screen, and my mother was like horrified. She like looks away she'd walk through the room, and she was just like, "Oh, what are you watching?" You know, it was like disturbing, right? So that's something that you could probably link to, like kind of like the Nazi, you know, the way that there's like this horror of like thousands and thousands of rats, and they did include that, and it doesn't exactly fit the story either. It was in the original German one, and it was in the new one too, and it's like, what do all these rats have to do with the vampire? Nothing. Like, it's just like, here's a bunch of rats and they're gross, you know. But I saw it as about mental health, maybe a little bit about addiction, because it is to some degree or other, even though the vampire is so ugly and is like destroying her, she's like sexually aroused by him, and she keeps coming back to him, right? And so like, somebody I was talking to compared it to like heroin, right? Like the way, if you ever see someone use heroin in a movie, it's almost like they're getting off sexually. Like it's weird the way they portray it. And that's what I saw it as. I saw William Dafoe, the Van Helsing character, as like a caring shrink. I saw the goth girl as supposed to be like your angsty teenage girl who's got mental health issues, who's sleepwalking. And I saw it as about like the stigma and shame surrounding mental illness. And I saw it as like American society trying to process the widespread epidemic of mental illness that's happening in our time. That's how I interpreted the film. What do you think?
No, absolutely. I mean, well, and it's in a long tradition, right? You have this sort of horror genre of like, Frankenstein or something, right? And more recently, I mean, there's sort of this thing of like being sort of beguiled and intrigued while you're horrified by, right, in a sense. And this is a very old thing, in like American culture with like, freak shows and right, kind of like where people, but of course that was a place where these people could sort of find a public and be in some sense part of society, but never quite fully. And there's this recent film called The Shape of Water, which again was like, so it's this kind of, and it can be a symbol certainly of like mental illness or like some kind of, unspeakable, it's kind of like when you're looking at a car crash, rubbernecking, you can't look away. It's like, right. It's like, oh, I'm repelled, but I'm intrigued. Right?
Well, I got to tell you, I almost don't want to say horror movies because I don't like horror movies. Like Shape of Water, don't like that kind of thing. Saw, don't like that kind of thing. Slasher, don't like that kind of thing. Right? I don't like that kind of thing. I like the Draculas, the Frankensteins, the Wolfman, the old 1930s and 40s ones I like the Hammer ones from the 60s and 70s. And it's like, I almost feel like they're a different category. They're not horror movies. They're like, I want to call them like gothic movies, right? Because they're about monsters. They take place in the 1800s, but they don't have jump scenes. I don't like jump scenes. I'll just be honest. It's just like, and there was plenty of that in Nosferatu. And I was just like, really? Come on. Plenty of these jump.
It's cheap. It's very cheap. It's just like,
I don't like that. I really don't. It's like, come on. I will say I did appreciate, like the cinematography of the original was very well done. And they kept like alluding to it, which I thought was good. Like, like the vampire has these hands like that are like huge, like big long fingers and all that. And he has like a shadow, right? And like the shadow kind of comes over people on the screen. That was brilliant, right? I'm really, really glad they did that. And I mean, and it was interesting because on the one hand, they did the regular vampire thing. On the other thing, they were kind of alluding to the original. So, I'm glad I went to see it. I might do another like a video review of it for the YouTube channel, just because I don't normally talk about these kind of things on here, and I think it's good to take a break from all the politics and just kind of talk about movies and stuff. But, that's kind of how I would see that film, and that I mean, that's where I'm at. What's the last movie you went to see?
Well, I'll just talk about the next movie I'm going to see. Sort of what I expect, and just because it's something that like I'm very familiar with the characters and the events. It's the Bob Dylan one.
Oh, okay. I'd like to see that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because and as a musician, right? Like it's very I mean, I spent a lot of time in the folk music scene, like in upstate New York, with like a lot of the old folkies who knew these people. I had friends who knew like Pete Seeger, right, and all the I got introduced to the work of Alan Lomax, who went around America like kind of trying to find and introduce people to these amazing musical talents. Like I mean, very famous one was Leadbelly, right, who was in Angola prison in Louisiana, and like kind of and Alan Lomax, as I understand, he's a communist, right? I mean, he's very much interested in going to the people, right, and kind of finding what are their traditions and what do they value, and like kind of sharing people like that real, not like this like corporate produced, right, kind of like kind of the radio, Which, I mean, on the other hand, right, like you had people like Woody Guthrie who used that medium to introduce people so in a very wonderful way, and there were some very interesting projects, right, that happened with that whole kind of FDR. I wish we had, like, you know, patronage of the arts for good purposes, you know. That would be nice.
Well, you know, that's one thing I've noticed about anti-imperialist countries. You know, like in Iran, the government has a special fund that if you write a novel in the Persian language, they will pay you to do it, and they will pay you to publish it. You know, and that's because the Persian language is not spoken very many places. And so the government goes out of its way to make sure that there are novels and things published in the Persian language. I think that's very cool. And that a lot of countries really do a lot to, like, government fund art and culture because they see it as part of, like, the duty of the state, which we don't really have here. I mean, we briefly had a National Theater Project, and we know the CIA was manipulating art and stuff, but not publicly. I mean, you know, that's one of the great things about Roosevelt was not just all the bridges he built, but all the murals, the social realist paintings, etc., you know, that he created. You know, so yeah, that was awesome. I will say, as far as the folk thing, you know, I'll be curious. I probably will go see this Bob Dylan movie as well. I would be curious, the politics, because that folk revival of the late 50s, right, as McCarthyism was toning down and the sudden revival of folk music was very political. It was very, very political. And it was very, very influenced by the Communist Party USA. I mean, there's no question about it. You know, Pete Seeger was a member of the Communist Party until at least 1968, 69. Woody Guthrie, you know, would never admit he was, but he probably was. He had a column in the Daily Worker. And that, you know, there was an older communist that I knew in New York City, and she had known Bob Dylan when she was a teenager, when she lived in New York City, in Greenwich Village, right? And she said that, you know, people make fun of the way Bob Dylan sings and all of that. That was normal. Like, they all tried to sing like that because they wanted to sound like Woody Guthrie. They were going out of their way to sound like Woody Guthrie. You know, and that was, like, she said, every young guy who wanted to be a folk singer sang like that. You know, that was just how they sang, because that was and it was weird because a lot of these people were, you know, from New York City, from wealthier families in New York City and stuff, but they were trying to sound like, you know, hillbilly kind of, you know, because that was what they were going for. Right. And that, you know, I mean, Pete Seeger went to Harvard University. I mean, he was a Harvard guy from a very wealthy New England family. And that, I guess, the Pete Seeger thing, that came a little bit earlier. That was like late 1930s. And that was the Popular Front. The Communist Party had a line that they would celebrate the progressive aspects of American culture. So the Popular Front, you know, that was part of the artistic wing of communism in the late 30s, building an anti-fascist popular culture, etc. But then the folk revival of the 50s, late 50s, in response to McCarthyism, where you had a lot of very political songs kind of poking fun at conservatives and McCarthyism and supporting the civil rights movement, you know, Peter, Paul, and Mary and all of that. That was very, very political. And the Communist Party USA was part of it. They were not in control of it, but they were like there, and everything was being done because they were the boogeyman of McCarthyism. Number one, they represented Moscow's line, right? Number two, and in New York City, they still had a lot of power. People forget that, but in New York City, they really, I mean, even up into the 80s, they were a force to be reckoned with in New York City in particular, you know. And because of that, you know, they were a big factor in that. They had a seat at the table. Let me put it that way. Things were considered in relation to them and how they might react. You know what I'm saying? When big names like Pete Seeger and like the Almanac Singers and all that are party members, you know, they were a seat at the table. And so, you know, I'm curious how they deal with that in the film. I expect it'll be like that movie they made about the nuclear bomb guy, and they'll just completely, you know, they'll mention it in passing. What was the movie about Oppenheimer? It'll be like that, where they'll just be like passing mention, and they won't get into the context, you know, because they won't, you know.
One thing I heard they depicted slightly better than some other portrayals is the whole, like, when Dylan went electric thing. It's not actually, and just so you know, like, that's not really what it was about. Like, especially for somebody like Alan Lomax, right? And just as another, like, kind of contextual thing, like in the US, it's Alan Lomax getting, you know, really these field recordings of like how people and also in Britain there was this guy called Ewan McCall who was
I know him. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Right. So and there and in a way it's like informed by Soviet ethnomusicology actually, because it's like kind of, you know, you go to the people, you don't tell them what their music means, you ask them, like, and really kind of absorb. So that's in a way that's what the whole, like, why are they putting on these folksy sounding or rough sounding voices? It's because it's an identifying. Now it becomes like a little cliched, and like some of these people don't really understand that deeper meaning to it. But it's a way of identifying with, like, I'm not of this polished, you know. At that time, the the music industry was much more controlled. Like now we have all kinds of, but at the time it was very, you know, like, you know, oh, that's going on the air, that's not going on the air. It was very, right. And so in a sense they were saying, I'm not from that. I don't represent that. And I think this is what Woody Guthrie was doing. I represent the people, right? And so for Alan Lomax or for people like that, it was not about, like, he would go to like black blues musicians and it's like, that's folk music, right? They might be playing an electric guitar. So what, right? This is a man of the people, right? Or a woman of the people who are like rooted in that community. So that community is, you know, this actual working class community is being represented on the national stage, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to,
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
You know, as opposed to like, you know, I'm, you know, this bougie kid, you know, who went to university, and I don't understand that, but I'm gonna like kind of just put it on as kind of this persona, you know. And so that's what, so the fear was that Dylan going electric kind of represented like, right. And I think this is what happened. Like kind of, they went with Dylan and kind of that whole new, right, electrified scene. And then they lost continuity. So that's like a break in, like the folkies kept going with that more, right, kind of to the people, to the masses, right. That kind of spirit.
Yeah.
And the acolytes of Dylan kind of, yeah, so it just became increasingly thin and like, you know, like not, you know, see what I mean?
Yeah, well, you know, you mentioned Leadbelly, you know, that guy. You know, there's a song called Goodnight Irene, right, that he wrote that Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger kind of made famous. They took from him. And I point to that song because I will say, you know, I don't know rap music. I really don't, right? I don't. But I really don't appreciate the way people are always like, oh, rap music is so full of disgusting crime and all of that. And it's like, yeah, but a lot of music is, you know what I'm saying? And like, I always point to whenever people start in about rap music is so bad, you know, I say, listen to Whiskey in the Jar, the Irish song, right? That's pretty bad. You know what I mean? I mean, that's, you know, the guy is, I mean, the chorus is about him getting drunk on whiskey. He robs a cop at gunpoint, and then his unmarried girlfriend fills his gun up with water. And then calls the cop to come arrest him. I mean, you know, it's pretty, you know, and then he's in jail, but his brother in the military is going to like bust him out of jail or something. I mean, it's like, it's pretty, you know, gangsta, as they say, you know, but like a lot of people have talked about like that song, Goodnight Irene, right? That if you look at the original lyrics of the song, it's pretty intense, you know? So what? I mean, it was written in like the 1920s and by a guy who was in Angola prison, right? I mean, why wouldn't it be? I mean, you know, but you know, Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger changed the lyrics to be more family friendly. But the song is, you know, it's kind of a sad love song, right? But people get disturbed by the opening line of the song, which is like, I think the original version of the song, he starts out, the first verse is, I asked your mother for you, but she said you are too young. And it's just like, dang, okay. Nowadays, you know, people are like, that's pretty intense. But people did get married at quite a young age in the South in the 1920s, right? I mean, that's, you know, people getting married at 13 or 14 was not unheard of back then in the South.
This is just social realism, basically.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, in the context, that's how, you know, I mean, and the mother did say no. So, I mean, you know, and then the last verse of the song, it's like, he says like, it's like, right. And if, right, it's like, you know, it's like, he's sad that he can't marry Irene. Right. And so then the last verse of the song is like, if I don't, marry Irene or something, I'll take morphine and die. Like he's going to kill himself with morphine. Right. Again, drug addiction, awful thing, but suicide, awful thing. It's a pretty grim, dark song. Right. And then when Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie did it, they made it just kind of like a sweet, just kind of, good night to the woman you love or something. It's actually kind of a dark song, about, the dark realities of life. I mean, it's pretty R-rated, but I'm not surprised given the context, and I don't think it's wrong to write about such things. I mean, maybe you should be responsible in how you do it. You don't want to encourage suicide. You don't want to encourage things that are, unhealthy. But at the same time, that was the way things were at the time. I mean, so I don't know.
If you see it in the context, right, of like the folk music tradition, right? I mean, who was really gangster? Scottish Highlanders. I mean, you listen to these ancient ballads, and it's like, about like, the Hieland lads were brisk and braw. The Hieland lads are proud and gaudy, and one of them's gane to Glasgow town to steal awa his bonny Peggy. And there's like, there are hundreds of like, they're all about like, I went to, and her dad said no, and then we eloped together, and like that's like,
well, I've on this stream when I was a kid, my parents took me to like a folk or to like an artistic festival in upstate New York, and there was a guy who played the harp. There was a harpist, and he performed the Ballad of Young Andrew, which I remember as a kid being like wildly disturbed by. So years ago, I just looked it up. And I thought, I have to play this on the streams. I'm not going to play it tonight, but I've played it many times. And this is like one of the oldest English ballads, and it's really, really dark and intense. And, I've played it on these streams before, and it's very long. It's like, I think the song goes 13 minutes. It's like verse after verse after verse, but it's really violent and gory and sexual. And, it's just, but that's, again, it's about the Middle Ages. Like that's,
Well, this is the way that these communities like deal with these realities, right? Like, if there are ballads about dark things like, infanticide or murder, or, I mean, we have, the ancestor of Luigi and Robin Hood, right? Like this, maybe not, but you know what I mean? Like it's, and so the thing is like, but these are people who necessarily, can't necessarily read or write. Right. Yeah. And so like, just, this is how they get their stories, handed down. Right. Like, I mean, the higher class people might want to clean it up a little bit, or middle class. Right. Like actually the middle class, this is the theory, like working class people and upper class people are very direct. Middle class people are like, we need to be polite.
No, I remember when I read Charles Dickens has an actual like history of like of every English king up until his time, and there was a copy of it on my parents' bookshelf, and I remember reading it when I was a kid, and I noticed that every king had like a weird nickname, right? Like the bald king, the short king, the fat king, or something like that. And I wondered about that. And I remember asking somebody about that. And they explained to me that at that time, when very few people could read and write, probably the only time that the only way people knew about their king was through song. These minstrels would go around and perform songs that kind of told people who their monarch was, right? And so the fact that every monarch had like a silly nickname made sense because you're singing a song about it, and that there was no newspaper back then because there was no printing press, and that most people, the only way they knew about King Henry I was through the song they heard about him from the local troubadour. And so I thought that was fascinating.
Names like Lackland, right, for one who doesn't have any land. Right? Yeah, that's a little embarrassing, right? They're like, John, I think that was King John Lackland.
There you go.
Kind of and this is a way that like that attitude is put in the record. It's like,
and what I also remember, reading, and this was Charles Dickens. This is written in like the 1800s, and I remember King Edward II was gay, right? And I know that, and he just totally like no apology, no innuendo, like the king was a homosexual, and I'm just like, oh, really? Like I thought you weren't allowed to say that in Victorian times, but I guess you are, I'm just, oh, okay. So, I remember reading that and, I mean, it was just, I don't know. I look back at that, it's interesting to think how heavily influenced. I mean, America is a very Anglo country. You're in Canada, which is a very, very still part of the, what is it? What do they call it? The Commonwealth or whatever, right? It's still, I mean,
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting to think how affected by all of this we really are, right? I've heard people say America is more more English than England, right? England's kind of gotten over a lot of the Victorian stuff we still hold on to, right? We're a bit more Victorian in our culture in some ways,
There are a lot of things. There are a lot of ways you could think about it. I mean, one is, I've actually been thinking that in some ways Americans relate to Europe in ways that are surprisingly similar to how Russians relate to Europe. In a sense, like kind of at the edges of Europe, right? And kind of, in a sense, like with both this kind of like inferiority complex and superiority complex, but in a sense it makes both are like freer in some way to receive these European ideas and practices, right, in novel ways, right, and innovate, right, and sort of, make it their own as a tradition.
I'll tell you something, Britain is such a different country than the United States is right now. So catch this, right? In America, we've had this argument for, since the 60s, really, prayer in school, right? Should we pray in school? Well, they're having that argument in Britain now, except it's the right-wingers that are saying don't pray in school, and it is the liberals that are saying to pray in school. You know why? Muslim prayers.
Yeah.
And actually that's a big thing, right? Is that there are so many Muslims in London and places like that, right? That a lot of schools are putting up prayer rooms. So these kids can do their five, they can keep the pillars of Islam, right? And there's a lot of traditional British people that are like, no, we're not going to have state sponsorship of this other religion. It's funny because in America, we've been arguing about prayer in school, but it's Christian prayers and it's conservatives that want it. And it's liberals that are like, well, separation of church and state, we can't do that. And that shows you how different. I mean, the idea of putting up a Muslim prayer room in a school, that would just never happen in a public school in America, except maybe like in Dearborn, Michigan. It might happen, but anywhere else, it's not.
I've seen American airports where they call it the yoga room, but it's kind of a euphemism. It's like the Muslims use it more than anybody else because it's like because they believe that and this is what I really respect, right? It's like 5 times a day. It's like they're like a married kind of horizontal. It's like monks in a way, except that they can get married. Like everybody's on a prayer rule. It's like, this time I'm going to go pray now. Like I think that's beautiful. That's very serious. And
provide structure. I mean, I find that admirable. As a non-Muslim, I can respect that, so absolutely. Well, hey, Brian, it's been really, really great to have you on. Thanks for hopping on and talking about movies and music and everything in between. It's been really, really fun. I'm looking forward to your music in DC. It sounds like we're going to live stream the event, so people will be able to see you on YouTube. I was on with Jamarl Thomas this morning, and he definitely wants to be. He's going to be there, and he definitely wants it to be. So yeah, there you go. So I'm looking forward to everything. It's going to be a great inauguration day. So all my best, Brian. Anything else you want to say before you go?
That's about it. Sometime I'd love to get into the whole, because the other secret is like there's a moment at which, right, with that whole kind of like rough and tumble working class. So the place before country and blues became 2 genres. Like that's really interesting to me. So
well, future conversation for sure. All right, all my best, Brian, and thank you. All right. Well, that was fun. If anyone else wants to hop on, we'd love to have you hop on. We talked about everything. This is just a chill stream tonight. I love this YouTube channel and the work that we all do. I really do. And but I am committed to I'm not going to push myself with this YouTube channel. I'm going to come on here and do these streams when I feel I have something to say. Or when I feel, but I'm not going to like try to think of a show every night or something. I'm not going to do that just because I don't want to lose the quality of what we're doing. I'm also doing a lot of shorter videos. I'm going to be doing that. I got, all kinds of different stuff I'm working on. But yeah, and I'm writing books because I like to write, and I feel that writing, in order to write a good book, you can't just think, well, you can't just say, oh, I think I heard somewhere. No, you got to go find the source, right? You got to go cite it, you got to quote it, and so that's the good thing about having a book is that in this book I actually do cite everything I talk about. All right, unanimous. Hey,
hold on.
How you doing? What's on your mind, unanimous?
You know what? How about you just tell them about the inauguration?
What's that?
Tell them about the inauguration.
What about it?
Tell them about your plans. Use this as a way to bulletin it out.
Huh?
Use this as a promotion for it. Talk about what you
okay.
planned.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna have an event, good food, music, speeches. It'll be a reception, inauguration day evening, Washington, D.C. Hope folks can make it. Should be a fun evening. And we're going to be, doing outreach in the morning, to Trump supporters and stuff like that. But then we have the event that night. So come on by and eat some filet mignon at the Hilton Garden Inn, a couple blocks from the White House. It's going to be fun. So there you go. Yeah, it'll be fun. You can register. We do have a registration link if you want to let us know you're coming ahead of time and give us your contact info. Maybe I'll pull that up here if you would like to register.
Good, man, but I'll try and make it to Chicago, though.
Yeah, well, Chicago, that's the one we definitely, that'll be the big event of the year. We are hoping to fill that auditorium with 400 people, but there's a lot of work that we're going to have to do to make that happen, right? I mean, and we've got a multi-pronged strategy for outreach for Chicago. I was just meeting with somebody from Chicago earlier tonight who was excited to help out with it, and we've been having our weekly meetings. CPI is marching ahead. So have you joined CPI yet, unanimous?
Not yet. Just hold on. Yeah, well, I also had a question. Hold on. It seems like there was kind of an interesting little schism within the MAGA movement between Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, and I wouldn't say definitely not Trump himself, and a lot of people who were enthusiastic about Trump, and it was kind of over something called H-1B visas.
Yeah, I saw that, and I it's funny. I saw Vivek Ramaswamy's tweet, and I responded to that tweet, and I kind of I didn't realize the fight was specifically about the visas, right? Because I agreed with what Vivek Ramaswamy was saying about American culture and the problem we have, but I'm not sure I agree with him about the visas, right? And I saw that, and I honestly, I'm a little bit neutral on that. I am not against having foreign workers come to the United States and contribute to our economy. I do think that we should educate our people better and change our culture, and that the brain drain, the way we do brain drain,
it's not good for those countries. It makes the immigration crisis worse.
Yeah. Right. So overall, the trend is bad. But that said, I don't want to take the visas away from people or not have us import, people that we need to keep going at the moment. But I'd like to see us change our education.
Slow switch. It's basically a slow moving of a switch from foreign workers to fully qualified and qualified and able.
It's true. There was a great article that was published when Trump first got elected, because Trump, during his first campaign, he said he was going to make Apple make their iPhones in America. And I think it was Bloomberg News. They said that's not possible, that we do not have enough engineers. We do not have enough scientists.
And the infrastructure is garbage.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, we couldn't build the factory. It would require a mobilization on the level of World War II.
And we'd have to import a lot of the minerals and spare parts in. When was the last time you saw a halfway decent highway or road that would be able to handle all those parts moving toward it?
Yeah, it just couldn't happen. And I saw that article and I shared that around, and I thought that was a very good point. And it's like, so, I kind of, would I have, if I had known when I first responded to that text that it was about the H-1 visa thing, would I have responded the way I did? I don't know. I mean, I saw that I
It's
saw
a weird thing because it seems like the best way to like tell a lie or spin bullshit is to sneak in a nice bit of truth in, and it's
Right.
like it's basically like, I don't know if you've owned dogs before, but if you have to give a dog medicine, you like put it in cheese, and the
Oh.
dog eats the cheese, and they take the medicine because they won't take the medicine.
Gotcha.
Like that's how it. That's basically how you spin a nice tale of bullshit nowadays.
Very,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Now, it's also interesting that Vivek ran on being very anti-China.
Mhm.
Like, he was one of the most disgusting China hawks on the campaign trail.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I just, I mean, but Trump, and then what's weird is Trump is supporting TikTok now. He's not even, I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know what we're going to get. I'm not ready to give up on it. I'm not saying that Trump is going to do all the great things he promised to do, but I'm really
Anyone
happy.
says anything on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I'm happy
at
that
this-
Trump campaigned on doing that and people still voted for him. And I feel like I have a job to do as an anti-imperialist in America. I have to try and build anti-imperialist politics among the American people, right?
Yeah.
That's what I got to do. So any way I can do that. I also got to say that, as much as my beliefs, I still believe we need a planned economy. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need to oppose the system of globalism, imperialism. I'm done with communists. I really am. 4 or 5 years ago, trying to own communism was one thing, but at this point, communism is just so far gone at this
Oddly
point.
enough, it's an oversaturated market.
Yeah, completely. And it's saturated by bad things that I don't want to be associated with. And I just, I think innovationism is the new stage, and I'm excited about it. And that, really, especially since the fall of the Soviet Union, everywhere we've seen socialism come into the world, it's been a rebrand of some kind. Bolivarianism, Baathism, social, it's not classic ML. Classic ML, I think, is a dead brand. I draw heavily from ML. I know about ML, but it's a dead brand. And
You don't try and repudiate, ML and whatnot. Not as much, I don't think.
Really? I mean, I agree. Lenin's definition of imperialism is absolutely correct. The need for a planned economy, that's correct. I uphold. I think we need to point to everything the Soviet Union achieved as proof that we don't need, the chaos of the market. And
Don't forget China.
What? And
Don't
China
forget
is a great
China,
success. Yeah, China's a great success.
North Korea.
Yeah, I mean, I stand with them against the imperialists, and I know that, they were able to accomplish a lot before the fall of the Soviet Union when they faced big economic difficulties, and the fact they survived that is because they have a lot of loyalty. So I don't repudiate, I don't denounce that, but I just feel like trying to be the communists 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, that might have been the thing to do, but now it's not the thing to do. And I just see, at this point, what most Americans that are against the FBI and against the deep state think communists are is not good. And what most Americans who call themselves communists are is not what I want to be. So it's like, why
they go dangerously close to the satire.
Yeah. And so it's just why alienate yourself from the people who would agree with you, and why adopt the label of a group of people who don't agree with you? It's just like, it's just, we got to try something new.
I say, it seems like Trump's base is doing more than the Bernie Bros every day.
Yeah.
People say there are two former Bernie Bro paths. There's basically my path, which is, you're basically saying he never was good.
Mm-hmm.
The hell with him, that was all a dead end, and there's people who basically become EU dick riders.
Well, there you go.
I'm sorry, man. I know it's supposed to be a family show, but
that's okay. We got pretty R-rated earlier, so that's okay. That's all right. Well, listen, folks, it's almost 11, and it's been fun to talk with Unanimous, and I'm probably going to wrap it up here. So, it's been fun. We'll be back soon. Happy New Year to you and your family. I hope you have a great evening. Yeah, let's be in touch. I guess I'll put on the closing music. All right. Let's put on the closing music. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.